Imagine this. You step into a world that feels eerily familiar, yet unsettlingly different. The air is thick with tension, the ground beneath your feet heavy with the weight of ancient battles. You're not just a player, you're a warrior on the edge of an abyss. The game in question? Kazan. At first glance, it might seem like another Soulslike, a genre we all know too well. But this game? It's got a secret, and it's begging to pull you in deeper. You've heard of Khazan, right? A company with a track record that's anything but flawless. Their games? Mostly online experiences that never quite leave a lasting impression. So naturally, expectations for Khazan might not be sky high, but here's the thing. This game isn't what you think. It's more than just a simple dungeon crawler hack and slash. It's a battle for your very sense of self. From the moment you step into Khazan's world, you realize this is not a game. It's a test of endurance, of willpower. The protagonist, Khazan, isn't your average hero. Betrayed and driven by the thirst for revenge, he's pulled into a world where every decision, every step, could lead to his undoing. Possessed by a phantom blade, Khazan's very existence becomes a constant struggle between life and death. As you control him, you can't help but feel that inner turmoil, the crushing weight of betrayal, the burning need for vengeance, and the uncertainty of what lies ahead. It's not just about slashing enemies, it's about confronting your own fears and doubts. But here's the twist. The game doesn't hold your hand. Khazan doesn't ease you into this world. Instead, it throws you into the deep end, forcing you to grapple with its intense combat mechanics right from the start. You'll find yourself gasping for air, fighting not just for survival, but for the clarity of purpose. The path is unclear, the stakes are high, and you can't afford to falter. This isn't the slow-paced, methodical combat we've seen in other games. Khazan demands aggression, speed, precision. You'll be dodging, slashing, and parrying your way through a labyrinth of enemies, each more dangerous than the last. But the true enemy here isn't just the monsters or the bosses, it's the overwhelming sense of isolation. You're on your own with nothing but your instincts and your blade. The world around you is hostile, unforgiving. But that's exactly what makes it so captivating. There's something undeniably compelling about the struggle for survival in Khazan. It doesn't just challenge your reflexes, it challenges your very mindset. And as you fight through this desolate world, you'll find yourself asking, can you overcome your own demons? Stay with me, because what lies ahead is a journey that will test every fiber of your being. Khazan may be brutal, but it's a journey you won't soon forget. First impressions, a surprise success? When I first heard about Khazan, I won't lie, I wasn't exactly brimming with excitement. Khazan? They've made their mark in the online gaming world, but nothing about their past projects screamed game-changing. So when they announced their first foray into the Souls-like genre, I had my doubts. Could they really pull off something as intricate and unforgiving as Dark Souls or Sekiro? Was this just another hollow attempt to cash in on a popular trend? The first few minutes of Khazan did little to ease my skepticism. I was thrown into a world that felt strangely familiar. Heavy armor, dark corridors, and enemies that looked like they came straight from my nightmares. But as I began to fight, something caught my attention. The combat, it was smooth. Surprisingly smooth. Not just in it's playable kind of way, but in a way that made every slash, every dodge feel so precise, so fluid, that it immediately demanded my focus. The controls felt like they had been meticulously crafted, like a musician fine-tuning their instrument until every note was in perfect harmony. At first I thought it was a fluke, maybe just a lucky few moments. But as I played more, it became clear. This wasn't just smooth, this was buttery. There was no clunkiness, no lag, between my input and the on-screen action. It felt like my own body was the controller, and the game was just a natural extension of that. The responsiveness of the controls was immediately apparent, and it made every action feel weighty, like it truly mattered. You felt the satisfaction when you executed a perfect block or a well-timed dodge. It wasn't just about surviving. It was about thriving, dancing with danger, and living to tell the tale. What really set Kazan apart, however, was its approach to combat. While many Souls-like games focus on methodical, slow-paced battles where every attack could be your last, Kazan ramps up the intensity. This game doesn't want you to crawl through the dark, hiding behind a shield or taking slow steps with a heavy sword. No. Kazan wants you to fight with the fury of a beast. It encourages you to be aggressive, to attack relentlessly, to flip through the air and land powerful strikes on your enemies, all while managing your stamina and dodging out of the way of incoming attacks. It's a high-speed, high-risk, high-reward kind of gameplay. Each battle feels like a test of both reflex and strategy, where the stakes are as high as the adrenaline coursing through your veins. I was initially skeptical that such a fast-paced combat system could blend well with the deep strategic elements of a Souls-like game. But, somehow, Kazan makes it work. While you're encouraged to unleash relentless attacks, you're also forced to think about your every move. It's not just about mashing buttons. You need to manage your stamina, choose your attacks wisely, and know when to back off and wait for the perfect moment to strike. The result is a combat system that feels both fluid and strategic, where every move counts. Now, let's not get carried away. Khazan isn't perfect. There are moments where the game feels a little too chaotic, where you might find yourself overwhelmed by the number of enemies or the complexity of some boss fights. And yes, the story might not be groundbreaking. It's got the usual revenge arc, filled with betrayal and vengeance, but that's where the flaws end. In terms of gameplay, Kazan nails what matters most, the core elements. The combat is tight, the controls are flawless, and it all combines into a package that's far more than I ever expected from Nexon. In fact, as I continued playing, I found myself thinking, maybe Kazan has more to offer than I gave it credit for. Sure, it's rough around the edges in places, but in terms of gameplay and combat, it's definitely a surprise success. For anyone who's a fan of Souls-like games, this one deserves a shot. You might be surprised by how much you enjoy it. The combat, fluid, aggressive, and addictive. Let's talk about the heart of Kazan. It's combat. If you've played Souls-like games before, you know what to expect. Slow, deliberate combat with a focus on timing, precision, and patience. But Kazan, it's got a different rhythm. It takes the core mechanics of Souls-like games and speeds them up, blending fast-paced action with those deep, methodical elements we all know and love. From the very first fight, it's clear that Kazan doesn't want you to simply survive. It wants you to thrive, to conquer, to dance on the edge of danger. The combat system in Kazan is built on fluidity and aggression. You're not just slowly poking at enemies with cautious jabs. No. Here you're flipping, dodging, and unleashing powerful combos, all while carefully managing your stamina and timing your attacks perfectly. It's a high-speed, high-risk dance where every fight feels like a symphony of violence. The controls are so smooth that every action feels natural. You can string together quick attacks, perfectly block incoming blows, or dodge just in time to avoid a fatal strike, all without the sluggishness that plagues some other action games. One of the standout features of Kazan's combat is the emphasis on precision timing. Perfect blocks, dodges, and parries are essential to surviving the tougher battles. Mastering these mechanics feels like unlocking a new layer of the game's depth. A perfectly timed block, when executed correctly, sends enemies staggering, leaving them vulnerable for just a moment, giving you the chance to strike back with devastating power. It's this feeling of control, of being in the zone, that keeps you coming back for more. The game constantly challenges you to refine your timing, push your limits, and get better with every encounter. But it's not just about defending. Kazan is all about aggression, attacking relentlessly, but also knowing when to pull back and assess. The flow of combat isn't static. It shifts depending on your playstyle, the enemies you face, and the weapon you wield. Speaking of weapons, Let's dive into one of the most exciting aspects of Khazan, the variety of weapons at your disposal. There are 3 main weapon types in the game: the great sword, the spear, and the dual blades. Each one offers a vastly different playstyle, making the choice of weapon a significant factor in how you approach combat. The great sword, for example, is slow but devastating. Each swing has weight, and when you land a hit, it feels like a battle won. But that weight also means you need to commit fully to your strikes, leaving you open to counterattacks if you miss. This weapon requires patience and precision, but once you master its rhythm, the rewards are immense. The great sword isn't just a weapon, it's a statement. Slow, powerful, but calculated. On the other hand, the spear is all about stamina, management, and timing. Unlike the great sword's raw power, the spear rewards you for your ability to control space, to wait for the right moment to unleash a devastating combo. It's a weapon that demands strategy, where every attack needs to be well thought out. You'll be managing your stamina bar, ensuring you don't drain it too quickly while still delivering precise, powerful strikes. It's a different kind of thrill, one that requires more foresight than brute strength. Then there are the dual blades, the fastest of the bunch. They're the go-to weapon for those who prefer rapid, fluid combat. Each strike is quick, allowing you to zip around the battlefield, dodging, attacking, and evading in the blink of an eye. While they might lack the raw power of the great sword, or the precise control of the spear, dual blades make up for it with speed and versatility. The key here is dodging and maneuvering, getting in, landing a few hits, and getting out, before your enemies have a chance to retaliate. It's fast, exciting, and extremely satisfying once you get the hang of it. What's even better is that Kazan allows you to respec your skills freely. You're not locked into a single playstyle for the entire game. Want to try a new weapon, or experiment with a different skill set? Go ahead. The game encourages this kind of experimentation, giving you the freedom to adapt to any situation. This level of flexibility allows you to experiment with various builds, enabling you to find the one that suits your personal playstyle best. Of course, no game would be truly satisfying without challenge, and Khazan definitely delivers. The combat is rewarding, but it's also punishing. Every fight feels high risk, high reward. Mistakes can cost you dearly, and the bosses will test you like never before. But when you land that perfect hit or defeat a tough opponent, the feeling of accomplishment is like nothing else. It's that rush of victory after a hard-fought battle that keeps you coming back for more, pushing yourself to get better, to master the system, to conquer Khazan's brutal world. In Khazan, the combat is more than just a mechanic. It's the beating heart of the game, the reason you'll keep playing long after the credits roll. It's fast, it's fluid, it's addictive, and once you get the hang of it, you'll find yourself craving more. The story. Fantasy tropes with a twist. When you first step into the world of Khazan, the story doesn't exactly scream innovation. At its core, it's a familiar tale, one we've all seen before in countless fantasy games: betrayal, revenge, and the ever-present struggle between light and darkness. Khazan, a once proud general, is betrayed by those closest to him, left to die in a brutal world that shows no mercy. The premise is nothing groundbreaking. After all, tales of betrayal and revenge are the bread and butter of epic fantasy narratives. But here's where things start to get interesting. As you guide Khazan through his journey, you quickly realize that this isn't just another kill the bad guys and save the world story. Khazan is not simply a man seeking vengeance. He's a man who has been transformed, possessed by a blade phantom, an entity that haunts his very soul. It's this twist that elevates the narrative beyond the usual tropes. Khazan is no longer just a warrior on a revenge mission. He's a vessel for something far more dangerous and unpredictable. The Blade Phantom pushes him to fight not only for revenge, but for control of his own fate. Can Khazan reclaim his humanity? Or will the Phantom consume him entirely? The emotional weight of this struggle pulls you in, making every decision and every fight feel personal. While the story may not break new ground in terms of its themes, the execution is what sets it apart. The true magic of Khazan's narrative lies in how it immerses you in its world. The cel-shaded visuals play a massive role in this. The art style isn't just a stylistic choice, it's a tool that enhances the storytelling. The sharp contrasts and vibrant colors make the characters and environments feel almost like a living, breathing comic book. Khazan's transformation into a vessel for the Blade Phantom is made all the more haunting by the distinct look of the game. His every move is amplified by the visual style, making the stakes feel more urgent, more real. When Khazan fights, it's not just about the enemy in front of him, it's about the battle raging inside of him, between his will and the Phantom's influence. But it's not just the visuals that elevate the story. Khazan's voice acting and soundtrack also play crucial roles in pulling you deeper into the emotional core of the game. The voice acting is solid, with every character adding depth and authenticity to the world. But it's Khazan's own voice, laced with pain and determination, that truly stands out. His words carry weight, his emotions palpable in every line. Combined with a haunting, melancholic soundtrack that underscores the darker moments, the story comes alive in a way that's impossible to ignore. The music echoes the inner turmoil. Khazan feels quiet, somber notes during moments of reflection and intense, pulse-pounding rhythms during battle. It's a soundtrack that keeps you on edge, constantly reminding you that Khazan's journey isn't just about defeating enemies, it's about fighting for his own soul. In the end, Khazan might follow some well-worn paths in its story, but it's the way the game tells this story that makes it stand out. The twist of the Blade Phantom, the stunning visuals, the emotional voice acting, and the gripping soundtrack all come together to create an experience that feels far more engaging than a simple tale of revenge. Sure, the story might not redefine fantasy, but it leaves you questioning what it truly means to fight for one's humanity, and that's something worth playing for. Progression. Feeling stronger. Even when you're stuck. One of the most frustrating aspects of Souls-like games is the feeling of losing progress after each death. Losing precious souls or experience points can make each failure feel like a step backward, often discouraging players from pushing forward. But Khazan takes a different approach, one that ensures you always feel like you're moving forward, even when the odds are stacked against you. Unlike many other Souls-like games, though Khazan separates its progression systems in a way that guarantees you're never losing everything when you die. Souls, which typically serve as both currency and experience, are still part of the game, but they aren't the only source of progression. Instead, Khazan introduces a dual system that helps keep the player motivated. Your skill points are entirely separate from the souls you collect, meaning even if you die and lose your souls, the progress you've made with your skills remains intact. This is a refreshing change that takes some of the sting out of failure and ensures that every time you face a setback, you're still advancing in other ways. But the true beauty of Khazan's progression lies in the Phantom system. This unique mechanic introduces a new layer of depth to the game, offering players bonuses based on the spirit they choose to equip. The Phantoms are powerful spirits that Khazan can summon and bind to his soul, each one offering different abilities and enhancements. Whether it's boosting your attack power, increasing your health, or granting special combat abilities, the Phantoms give players the chance to experiment and customize their playstyle. What makes the Phantom system particularly exciting is its flexibility. As you progress through the game, you can switch out your Phantoms, experimenting with different combinations to see which best suits your current needs. The system allows you to adapt on the fly, making it easier to tackle difficult situations and bosses. It also gives you an additional sense of growth as you unlock and level up new Phantoms, gaining more powerful bonuses as the game progresses. In many Souls-like games, failure can often feel like a crushing blow. In Khazan, however, the design actively encourages players to keep going, even when they hit a wall. The separation of souls and skill points ensures that every bit of effort still feels rewarding. But beyond that, Khazan offers players ways to reinforce their strength, even in moments of failure. The Phantom abilities play a key role in this, allowing you to tailor your abilities to overcome whatever challenge you face. In addition to Phantom's Kazan's memories are another progression system that rewards you even when you're stuck. These unlockable upgrades increase your overall damage and other attributes, giving you tangible boosts even if you're struggling to get past a tough boss or level. This careful balance between challenge and reward is what makes Khazan's progression so satisfying. The game never lets you feel like you're truly at a standstill. Each time you fail, you can take that moment to reassess, try a different Phantom, or experiment with a new combination of skills. The game's design ensures that even in the face of difficulty, you're always growing stronger, and each step forward feels like an earned victory. In Khazan, progression isn't just about leveling up, it's about feeling the constant evolution of your character and your combat style. Every failure becomes a chance to learn, to adjust, and to come back even stronger. It's this continuous feeling of growth that keeps you invested, even when the game throws its toughest challenges your way. The difficulty. Brutal, yet fair. If there's one thing Khazan doesn't shy away from, it's its brutal difficulty. This is a game that takes no prisoners, throws you into the deep end, and dares you to survive. Right from the very first moments, you'll find yourself facing challenges that feel more like endgame encounters than mere introductions to the world. Bosses hit like freight trains, and even the regular enemies are far from pushovers. But here's the thing. Khazan is tough, no doubt about it, but it's fair. And that balance, brutal yet fair, is what makes the difficulty so addictive. From the moment you step into the world, you're greeted by a learning curve that's steep and unforgiving. Early bosses feel like they belong at the end of the game, with multi-phase attacks and unpredictable moves that can wipe you out in seconds. It's a design choice that's both thrilling and intimidating. Every time you die, you're left with that nagging question: what did I do wrong? And that's what keeps you coming back for more. Because Khazan doesn't just challenge your reflexes, it challenges your ability to adapt and improve. The game doesn't throw cheap tricks at you. Instead, it asks you to learn, to study the enemy, to understand their patterns, and to overcome them with your own skills. The difficulty curve in Khazan is relentless. The first few hours are filled with brutal encounters that will test your patience and your ability to read enemy movements. And then, the real kicker. The first major boss you encounter feels like a final boss, not a mid-game hurdle. It switches between multiple weapon types, constantly keeping you on your toes, demanding that you master its patterns if you want to survive. You'll find yourself stuck in a loop, dying over and over again. But each death is a lesson. You'll learn where to stand, when to dodge, when to parry, and when to strike. Every mistake becomes a stepping stone, and the sense of progress you feel with each successful attempt is almost intoxicating. One of the standout features of the combat system is its emphasis on timing, especially with the parry-heavy mechanics. Khazan rewards those who have the patience to wait for the right moment to strike. Perfectly timed blocks and parries are not just satisfying, they're essential. They can be the difference between life and death, especially when you're up against the game's most punishing bosses. If you can't get the timing right, you'll find yourself overwhelmed, losing ground quickly. But when you nail that perfect parry or dodge just in time to avoid a fatal blow, you feel an immense sense of accomplishment. It's moments like these that make the difficulty feel fair, because your success isn't based on luck, it's based on your skill. Stamina system plays a huge role in this as well. In Khazan, managing your stamina is just as important as managing your health. Attacks drain stamina, and if you're not careful, you'll find yourself unable to block or dodge at crucial moments. This creates a constant tension during fights, especially against the bosses. It's not just about hitting hard or hitting fast. It's about knowing when to hold back, conserve stamina, and wait for that perfect opening. Bosses are not just about defeating them. They're about outlasting them, outsmarting them, and controlling the flow of battle. But despite the brutal nature of the game, Khazan is always fair. Each death feels like your fault, not the game's. There's no cheap shot or unfair attack that comes out of nowhere. When you lose, you know exactly why. Maybe it was your timing off, or perhaps you didn't manage your stamina properly. It's this clarity that keeps you coming back to the fight, eager to refine your technique and improve. And when you finally defeat a boss, the feeling of accomplishment is worth every setback. In the end, the difficulty of Khazan is one of its greatest strengths. It never feels punishing just for the sake of it. Every challenge, every boss, every encounter is a test of your skills. And when you finally overcome them, the victory feels like it's truly yours. Level design. Repetitive, but rewarding. When you first step into Khazan, the level design feels strangely familiar, almost too familiar. The early areas, while functional, can feel a bit uninspired at first glance. The environments are often shrouded in thick fog with dimly lit corridors and a heavy sense of isolation. The themes of these initial levels, ruins, dungeons, and desolate landscapes, don't exactly scream innovation. They're somewhat repetitive, blending into each other as you make your way through them. It's easy to feel like you've seen this all before in countless other games. The grim atmosphere is present, but the levels themselves don't offer much to excite you visually or narratively at first. However, the beauty of Khazan's level design lies in its progression. While the first few areas might feel bland and monotonous, they serve a purpose: to ease you into the game's mechanics and combat systems without overwhelming you. These early stages are more about getting you comfortable with the game's controls and combat mechanics, laying the foundation for the intensity to come. There's still plenty of challenge here, but the real magic happens when you begin to venture further into Khazan's world. As you progress, the game gradually introduces more complex, intricate levels that keep the experience fresh and engaging. By the time you reach the mid to later regions of the game, you'll start to notice a noticeable shift. The fog gives way to clearer, more dynamic environments, and the design of the areas becomes more varied and visually striking. Khazan's world starts to feel more alive as you encounter larger, more detailed landscapes from ancient cities, teeming with danger to vast open fields that set the stage for epic battles. The level design evolves into something much more engaging, offering diverse areas that reflect the growing complexity of the game itself. One of the most notable aspects of Khazan's level design is how the game structures its regions. The game is divided into distinct regions, each one culminating in a boss fight. This structure is very reminiscent of Nioh, where levels are not just disconnected arenas, but part of a larger, cohesive world. Each region feels like a chapter in a larger story, with the environment and enemies in each area offering hints at the broader narrative and the challenges ahead. The boss fights serve as powerful checkpoints, marking your progress through the game and testing your skill as you advance. The progression of the levels themselves also follows a satisfying arc. While the early areas may feel simple, they gradually evolve into more elaborate, intricate designs. Some levels will take you through winding pathways, others will open up to grand vistas, and some will force you to navigate complex vertical spaces. The diversity of environments keeps things interesting, even when the thematic elements remain familiar. Khazan does a great job of varying the pace. One moment you're navigating tight corridors, the next you're facing off against hordes of enemies in wide, open arenas. In spite of the repetitive nature of some early areas, the sheer fun of combat and the variety of enemies you face make the experience worthwhile. As you progress through the game, you'll encounter new types of enemies, each with their own unique challenges and combat styles. This diversity in enemy design keeps things exciting, encouraging you to constantly adapt your strategies as you fight your way through each level. Whether you're battling hordes of weaker enemies or facing down terrifying bosses, the combat never feels stale. Ultimately, Khazan's level design is a slow burn. The early stages may not leave a lasting impression, but as you advance, the game builds on its foundation and introduces more varied, exciting environments that keep you hooked. The levels may start off repetitive, but the deeper you go, the more rewarding the experience becomes, showing that sometimes a little patience in the beginning pays off in spades later on. Comparison: Nioh, Souls, and what sets Khazan apart. When it comes to Khazan, the first thing that comes to mind for many players is the undeniable resemblance to Nioh and other Soulslike games. And they're right. Khazan does share some key features with these iconic titles, particularly when it comes to its structure and combat mechanics. You've got the high-stakes boss battles, the reliance on skill and timing, and the same dark, punishing atmosphere. But while it's clear that Kazan draws inspiration from Nioh and the Souls-like genre, it doesn't just copy these games, it carves out its own path in subtle but important ways. Take the combat, for example. If you've played Nioh or any other Souls-like title, you'll instantly recognize the familiar rhythms of combat in Kazan. The game has that same deliberate, methodical feel, with moments where you need to time your dodges, parries, and strikes just right to avoid being overwhelmed. But there's a notable difference. Kazan doesn't just rely on the slow, heavy combat typical of the genre, it leans into faster-paced, more aggressive combat, encouraging players to go on the offensive rather than just play defense. This fast-paced action isn't just an aesthetic choice, it fundamentally changes the way the game plays. You're rewarded for being quick on your feet, for learning when to strike and when to retreat. In this way, Kazan feels more dynamic, more fluid than the typical Souls-like, making it stand out even among its more methodical peers. Another area where Kazan sets itself apart is in its visual identity. While many Souls-like games rely on dark, muted tones and a gritty, realistic art style, Kazan embraces a distinct, cel-shaded look that brings a unique flair to its world. The visual style doesn't just serve as an aesthetic choice, it enhances the storytelling and combat. The sharp contrasts and bold colors make the cutscenes come alive, adding a layer of drama and intensity to key moments. This art style is something you don't see in many other Souls-like games, and it gives Kazan its own unmistakable identity. You're not just playing through a grim, shadowy world, you're moving through an expressive, art-driven experience that gives each battle, each encounter, a unique visual flavor. That being said, it's impossible to ignore that Kazan does feel derivative in some ways. It borrows heavily from Nioh and the Souls-like genre, especially in its structure and gameplay. The level design, the difficulty curve, the boss fights, they all follow patterns familiar to fans of Nioh or Dark Souls. But here's where the game succeeds. It doesn't merely copy what came before. It takes these familiar features and enhances them with unique systems like the Phantom system. This edition introduces a level of customization and strategy that sets Kazan apart. The Phantoms are powerful spirits that Kazan can summon, each providing unique bonuses and abilities that can drastically change how you approach combat. This feature is a breath of fresh air in a genre where innovation is often limited by tradition, and it gives Kazan a sense of originality even within a familiar framework. Despite its similarities to other games in the genre, Kazan does enough differently to carve out its own niche. The faster combat, the innovative Phantom system, and the striking visual identity make it feel fresh, even as it channels the spirit of Souls-like games. Kazan may share many similarities with its predecessors, but it stands out by taking risks, experimenting with new ideas and blending them into a cohesive, enjoyable experience. In the end, Kazan is both familiar and unique. It borrows from the best elements of the genre but adds its own twist, offering a fresh take on the Souls-like formula. It's not just another clone, it's a game that knows its roots and isn't afraid to take them in a new direction. And for that reason, Kazan deserves a place in the conversation about the best Souls-like games out there. Performance, smooth and polished. One of the most impressive aspects of Kazan is its technical performance. In a genre known for demanding hardware and complex mechanics, Kazan runs surprisingly smoothly, even on older systems. The game is well optimized, offering a seamless experience that ensures you can focus on the gameplay rather than dealing with lag, frame drops, or long load times. Whether you're facing off against a massive boss or navigating the intricate levels, the game delivers a smooth and stable performance, making it accessible to a wider audience, even those without top-of-the-line hardware. What stands out even more is the rarity of bugs. In a world where many modern games are riddled with crashes and technical issues, Kazan stands out as a rare example of a polished product. During my time playing, I experienced virtually no bugs, with the occasional crash to desktop being an outlier that's almost unheard of in today's gaming landscape. It's a testament to the developer's dedication to creating a bug-free experience that doesn't compromise gameplay. Such stability ensures that players remain immersed in the game's world, without any interruptions to break the flow. The importance of optimization cannot be overstated, especially in a game as demanding as Kazan. The smooth performance paired with its excellent accessibility means that players can enjoy a flawless experience regardless of their system. Whether you're a hardcore gamer with a high-end rig or someone with a more modest setup, Kazan ensures that everyone can jump into its brutal world without frustration. This level of optimization enhances the overall experience, making the game not only more enjoyable, but also more inclusive, allowing a broader range of players to enjoy everything it has to offer. Conclusion: is Khazan worth your time? To sum it up, Khazan may not reinvent the wheel when it comes to its story. It follows familiar fantasy tropes of betrayal and revenge. However, where it truly shines is in its gameplay, visuals, and progression systems. The combat is fast-paced and fluid, with a unique twist on the traditional Souls-like formula, making each encounter feel intense and rewarding. The cel-shaded art style gives the game a distinct visual identity, elevating the overall experience, while the Phantom system introduces a level of depth and customization that sets Khazan apart from its competitors. The progression is expertly designed to keep you feeling like you're always advancing, even when you hit tough spots. And the difficulty, while brutal, is always fair, ensuring that every victory feels earned. On top of that, the game runs incredibly smoothly, even on older systems, providing an accessible experience for a wide range of players. So, is Khazan worth your time? Absolutely. For fans of Souls-like games, it delivers a challenging yet gratifying experience that's sure to keep you hooked. It might not break new ground in its story, but the gameplay, visuals, and systems make it a standout in the genre. What do you think about Khazan? Share your thoughts in the comments below, and don't forget to hit that subscribe button for more gaming reviews.